I wanted to get this video out as soon as possible because of how many of you enjoyed this one. Also, if you have not seen the first Halloween events video I did surrounding Riot's MMO, check that one out first, or the one you are currently watching will likely not make sense. For the two champions I'm going to touch on today, I'll just be going over what Riot could do for the build-up to the actual Halloween event, not the event itself. I've chosen Amumu and Evelyn for this video because Nocturne seemed too easy to build an event around, and I didn't know how to structure anything around Shaco that wasn't even more frustrating to deal with as a player than what I'm going to outline in this video. So Amumu and Evelyn. Building off of what I talked about as far as build-up goes prior to the event, I'd like to see players more involved with the initial appearance of these sightings icons. Obviously, if you see the raid boss level threat even prior to the event, it will likely result in death. But I would like it to also be a blessing to the lucky few low-level players who actually fall prey to these champions before anyone even knows what's going on. We'll start with Amumu. As far as his lore goes, there's not much there. I think he's long overdue for an update. Briefly put, he's a lonely and melancholy soul from ancient Shurima, roaming the world in search of a friend. Doomed by an ancient curse to remain alone forever, his touch is death, and his affection ruin. So essentially he cannot get close to anyone. He is cursed to be forever alone because harm befalls those that he tries to get close to. Obviously, this is terribly sad. Now, I have an idea for an Amumu rework that is far, far worse than this that I'd like to share with you quickly at the end. Since I don't believe it takes away from anything we know about Amumu already, it merely expands upon it. So stick around for that. Because of his lore, I would have Amumu literally just approach a low-level player in the wilderness while they're out questing, somewhere far cut off from civilization. He'd have a quest for you that would be something very easy, and likely very sad considering all Amumu wants is someone to spend time with. So let's just say the first quest he gives you is to go pick flowers with him somewhere, or go into town and fetch a toy and bring it back. Literally the easiest quest in the world. A collect quest. And it's flowers. Wow, easy. So you complete this quest with him. Upon completing it, you receive a debuff called Despair. What it would do is it would cause you to take damage over time while you're near Amumu, and he's following you. So, this puts you in a weird spot. You can either keep completing quests for Amumu, or you can run away from him in an effort to not die to his curse effect. If you are somehow capable of completing another quest for him, before the debuff kills you, you gain another stack of said debuff, making your death that much more inevitable. Now, you're either going to die, or somehow make it back to civilization where Amumu does not follow. If you die to Amumu's curse, then you get to witness after you're dead Amumu throwing one of his famous tantrums, and this would probably leave like a mark on the ground of some kind, and likely a lot of collateral damage. If you make it back to civilization, eventually you would get to a point where Amumu stops following you within a certain vicinity of town. Because A, he probably wouldn't go there, and B, it might be dumb if one of these sightings appeared in town. So when he stops following you, if you turn back to look at him, you'd see him throw a tantrum here as well before running off into the wilderness and disappearing. Only in this scenario, you'd still be alive. And that would be the build-up for the Amumu-focused event. Amumu would appear and approach random low-level players in the weeks prior to the event, and give them easy quests that would ultimately kill them. That would be how the initial sightings icons would appear for this Halloween event. Nothing too crazy, pretty simple, pretty sad. The Evelyn one is a little better. Her lore is a little bit deeper than Amumu's, but to sum it up for you, she's a horribly non-binary demon thing. That's right, you thought she was female. You have some pictures to delete. Essentially, she lures in prey and then torments her victims with as much pain as she can inflict before they die. Now, this next idea might not be 100% true to her lore, but there's no better champion they could use to torment players like this. So let's just assume in the game that you can get married and/or have a spouse. Yes, that's a big assumption, but bear with me. Riot could dedicate in-game GMs around this time of year to approach players in the wilderness disguised as the targeted player's spouse. Now, this would only occur when the player's spouse is not online. So while the player is out running around questing, they see their spouse's in-game character walk up to them with the correct in-game name. The player then checks their friends list only to find that that person isn't even online. So a sane person would probably put in a ticket. Ideally, before they can do that, the GM could transform into Evelyn, kill the player, and leave. It would be that simple. Now, you wouldn't need a GM for this. You could automate this process, but I feel like that leaves too much room for error, and if something like this were to be executed poorly, it could break the game. It would, however, be incredibly cool to experience that WTF moment while what appears to be your in-game spouse is saying Evelyn voice lines to you before spilling your guts and ulting away. This then would also be a sighting that appears on every player's map. GMs are probably not necessary, but it would be cool to show up to work and have one of your job duties be to murder one random player that fits the criteria, completely in cold blood and disguised as their in-game spouse. Now that would be pretty dirty. What I'd like to leave you all with today is a lore question wrapped up in my idea for an Amumu rework. The rest of the video is completely separate from any MMO related material and has nothing to do with this series. I just want to hear your thoughts on it. So Akshan's weapon, the Absolver. The weapon that, upon slaying an enemy, returns to life anyone that said enemy has recently killed. So if a bad guy kills your friend, and then you kill the bad guy with the Absolver, your friend would come back to life. Simple. Have you ever wondered what would happen if someone were to take their own life with the Absolver? How would that work? Well, here's my best guess. Amumu is ancient, and so are the Sentinels of Light. Imagine Amumu was the son of one of these Sentinels many years ago. He's out playing with a friend when something terrible happens and Amumu blames himself. It is in this moment of panic and fear that the curse comes to Amumu and tells him that he can fix what he's done. That his parents have access to a tool that fixes mistakes like these, and were Amumu to use this item on himself, it would not only save his friend's life, but also preserve his own. So Amumu runs in a panic to wherever the Absolver is, uses it on himself, and is then trapped between life and death with the curse for all eternity. Upon discovering this tragedy, the Sentinels give their son the proper burial rites, have him mummified, and that's that. I don't want to go into any further detail on this, because even without details, this story is dark and controversial, and I do not want to offend anyone with such a touchy subject. I do, however, think that it is the single best option for an Amumu origin story. This could also be why Shadia tells Akshan the weapon should never be used, an unspoken tragedy between the Sentinels. This will likely be the last that I talk about Halloween in this series, as there are bigger fish to fry like classes, races, nationality, reputation, crafting, PvP, PvE, and so much more. I will be uploading about all of these topics in this series, so don't forget to hit the subscribe button to see what I'll have next for you. I've thought for a long time that Amumu should have a very dark and serious VGU, because I honestly think he looks a little goofy. It would be difficult to give him such an intense lore update and maintain his adorable nature, but I think at least every other Rise rework, each champion deserves a little love.